If you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. For more videos like this. What's the scariest, eeriest thing you've been woken up by, or woken up to? I had a cat that was fascinated with rapid eye movement. I would be awoken from the deepest sleep by gentle tapping on my eyelid. His face would be inches from mine. The first time it happened, I freaked out and threw Leroy across the room. He woke me up this way countless times after that. I woke up to my mom panicking and locking my door and asking me to call the cops. It was around 3 a.m. and someone was trying to choke her and possibly do worse. She said that she heard someone open her bedroom door and lay on the corner of the bed. She called my name out multiple names thinking it was me, but then someone tried choking her and cutting her with something. She managed to kick them off and ran downstairs into my room to protect me. Once the police came, they did a search outside our home and found nothing. They asked if anyone else lived with us, and we said the only other person that lived with us was a man who rented the downstairs basement, but he was never a problematic person. This man went to church every Sunday and kept to himself. Honestly, he was barely there half the time because he was always working. They decided to speak with him anyways, and they found him in his room masturbating to porn and bleeding heavily because he had accidentally cut himself when my mom kicked him off. Yeah, that shit was scary. After that event, I had horrible sleep paralysis for several nights. I kept dreaming that a black shadow would crawl into bed right next to me and strangle me. Was about 15. Had just finished watching The Ring on one of those VHS tapes. The TV in my room at that time had no cable, just used it for video games and movies, so blank screen was normally that white/black static one. Went to bed after refusing to finish the movie, brought my dog, a lab, into my room to provide support. Dog must have accidentally stepped on the remote to turn the TV on at some point in the night, as I woke up to the static screen blasting on my TV with the sound high enough to make me basically shit my pants. We had a rooster who was pretty aggressive, but he watched the rest of the chickens. He was so aggressive though that only certain people could go near him, otherwise he'd attack and spur. For a while he had free reign of our yard, but we had to pin him because he'd attack people. Well, he'd figured out he could sort of halfway fly out and get back into our yard after we'd all gone to sleep. One night we woke up to what sounded like a young girl screaming at the top of their lungs. We ran outside to see what it was. An old bok, his name, was walking around decapitated. He'd picked a fight with a raccoon and lost, but that sound he made that night still haunts my dreams sometimes. Probably the time I was sleeping at my deer/hog camp and I woke up and I was staring at some eyes through the window. There was just enough light for me to see the light reflect off of those eyes. The smell, I knew the smell, and it was blood. The smell was like nothing I smelled before or since. I have smelled burning flesh, rotting bodies, meth labs, and nothing smelled like this. So of course I yelled, grabbed my rifle and ran outside, and when I got out there, nothing, no tracks, nothing but the dead silence and 4 dead and eaten dogs. We never heard them bark, and some of the dogs were mean as hell. I have a trained dog that is my general purpose badass. I trained him as a guard dog, retriever, and on hogs. This dog never shakes, but he was under my bed terrified to the point of him pissing/shitting himself. My buddies lost 2 dogs each, and we still to this day don't know what killed them. We even had a necropsy performed and the vet said whatever it was killed them instantly, and the dogs didn't suffer, and no evidence was found of any other animal that could possibly do this. I sold the camp the next day. One morning, around 4 a.m., I woke up paralyzed in my bed with a dark figure standing beside my bed looking over me. Just moments before I had been dreaming that I was burning people's homes to the ground while crying because a dark force, imagined Ares and god of war, was forcing me to do it. So I wake up, but I can't move. I'm trying my best to say anything, do anything, just to react, but I can't move a muscle. He stands next to my bed saying how he's going to take my razor away from me so that I don't hurt myself. He says that I'm going to hurt myself and others that I know. He says all this in the most sinister, dark, demonic voice I've ever imagined. While I'm scared out of my mind, he reaches down next to my bed and picks up the electric razor. Somehow I muster up the energy to move my arm and grab hold of it. I also get the energy to say, "No." I shouted as I sat up in bed, arms still outstretched. Perhaps it was all a dream. I thought it might be my roommate at the time, but he was out of town for the weekend. It felt so real to me. It was 4:23 in the morning, and I didn't go back to sleep that night. This is my true story. When I was 3, I fell asleep in my brother's bedroom across the hall. Usually when I had to go to the bathroom, I would go out of my bedroom, then take a left, then a right, and then a left, then I would be in the bathroom. Since I was in the bedroom across the hall, following the same steps as before would land me in the attic. Since I could generally navigate the house in a sleepy stupor, I wouldn't actually wake up until I had to aim. I was basically sleepwalking around the attic/storage space and found myself half sleeping/dreaming and very confused. At the time, my parents were renovating the end of the house, 100-plus-year-old New England farmhouse, and had torn down part where the basement had given way. I was trying to orient myself and was dreaming that I was in our playhouse and wanted to get out. I pushed on what I was dreaming was the door, but was actually a tarp covering the end of the house. The wall moved and I began to fall from the second story towards the ground. At this point I woke up. I grabbed the floor and began to scream while hanging from the floor of the house. My brother and sister were outside playing Ghost in the Graveyard and heard me scream. I remember very clearly that I was going to fall. I was only 3 and didn't have the strength to pull myself up. I was going to fall. I couldn't hold on any longer and so I let go and fell 20 feet to the gravel below. My brother and sister found me and ran inside to get my mother. They told her, "We found Petey's body," as if I wasn't in it anymore. My mom freaked out, came outside to get me, then took me to the hospital. No broken bones, but still today I sometimes wake up feeling like I'm falling. My girlfriend woke me up all freaked out and asked, "What's that noise?" It sounded like raccoons walking around in sticks/leaves to me at 4 a.m. so I told her to just go back to bed. She got up and opened our blackout curtains. She needs total dark to sleep, and the room lit up with bright orange light and she screamed, "Fire." I got up and our trash can was fully engulfed in flames as well as our fence. It was under a tree that was starting to catch and our car, which was next to the trash bin, was blackened on one side and plastic pieces were melting. I was lucky enough to get a hose to it before it got worse. After sifting through what was left, the fire department could only assume that someone walking down our street threw a cigarette into the trash at some point in the night and it eventually caught fire. Didn't fall asleep after that and had a fun time trying to stay awake at work that day. A friend and I had gone camping on the outskirts of our small town. We got the munchies and decided it would be a good idea to trek to the nearest shop to buy some food. After doing so, we started the long walk back. On the way back through the lonely 2 a.m. roads, we caught up with a bald man who was walking in the same direction as us, but he was 20 meters ahead or so. We kept our distance, as he was walking in the middle of the road, and when the occasional car approached, he stood staring at it and just howled, like a wolf. Eventually, he went in another direction, so we made it back to our campsite and went to sleep. I don't know how long had passed, but I shortly woke up to the sound of howling in the distance. That was one of the scariest things I've woken up to. Thunderstorm near my house. A few distant roars woke me up halfway, but I'd figure I could still sleep through it. That's when it happened. The brightest of lights flashed through my window, through my closed eyelids, accompanying with the loudest thunder that felt like it struck at my very core. It sounded like it was coming from within me and shaking my entire body. My heart instantly started racing as adrenaline coursed through my entire body. I shot up instantly, my entire body shaking. "Who the fuck are you and what are you doing in my van?" A couple of times in my life I've slept-walked, but only when I've fallen asleep in new places. I was away at college one of the first times this happened. Me and some buddies late Friday night decide that we're gonna drive to one of their houses, which is 5 hours away. He lives on a small island. We missed the late ferry and gotta catch the first morning one. Finally, when we get to his house, it's about 5 a.m. Everyone goes to sleep on the floor of his room, except for me. He lets me take his sister's bedroom cause she's out for the night and won't be back till tomorrow. I woke up to his dad yelling that first statement to me an hour after I went to sleep. I had walked outside of this house I had only walked through once, in the dark, through a puddle, opened the door on the passenger side of the van, got in and sat down. His dad was leaving for work and didn't know we were coming down from school. This is how I met his father. Went out camping with some family in the bush and we had been around the area before and knew there were bears in the area, but we've never had an issue, always keep the campsite clean and whatnot. Just for safety's sake, Dad tells me to take the 12-gauge shotgun with a box of 12 Georgia Magnum slugs, just in case shit goes down. Fast forward to about 4 o'clock in the morning, I awake to hear my tent being torn open, right through the side, and for what seemed like an eternity of OMG, I can't believe this is happening to me, I sit bolt upright in my sleeping bag to face whatever was coming through the tent wall. I'm simultaneously grabbing the shotgun, which had 3 slugs already in it, safety on, nothing in the chamber, don't get all righteous about gun safety on me, and was just about ready to swing around with the gun. Then I see my uncle's cat sitting there with a bewildered look on its face. The cat had tried to jump up on top of the tent during the night, and where its claw hooked on the top of the dome, the nylon of the tent came undone like a zipper, and just ripped away, and then the cat fell right through the 4-foot hole in the side of the tent. I don't think I've ever had my heart go that fast before, and the amount of adrenaline that is going through your body when you wake up for a bear attack, I certainly wasn't going back to sleep anytime soon. I love animals more than most people, but I nearly pumped a 12 Georgia slug into the cat just because. I have very lucid dreams. Oftentimes I realize I'm dreaming at the very beginning of a dream and can stay asleep and dreaming for a while without waking. That being said, I once fell asleep on my couch during a thunderstorm and had a dream that I was sitting on the same couch, watching the ball drop on New Year's. Suddenly, time slows down in the dream, all the lights and TV flicker, and there's suddenly this demonic, shadowed-ass looking motherfucker outside the window behind the TV. All at once, nightmare feeling hits. Everyone knows that feeling, abject fucking terror, nothing is right, everything is wrong. But I remember the feeling. I recognize I'm dreaming. Right as I think, wake up, the shadow bastard screams in high-pitched, Nail's voice, I'll be there when you wake up, bitch. Dream ball drops, dream New Year's hits, all lights in the dream room shut off, and at that very second all the clocks in my dream flash. An ear-splitting thunder rumble shakes my entire house. I wake up screaming, all the lights cut off for real. I see my boyfriend running towards me in the shadows and scream again just as a tree branch falls through the window behind the TV. I explosively shit shards of my own soul all over that couch. A group of friends and I were hiking and camping in the winter during our winter break. We shared a group tent, there were only 6 of us. On the last night of the trip, we decided to head to bed early to get extra sleep for the long hike home. Around 3 a.m., I hear a pinging noise, sort of like what you would hear if you threw a BB pellet at a tin roof. It was quick, just 1 2 3. I thought nothing of it and figured it was just all inside my head, until 2 other friends quietly asked if anyone else had heard the pinging noise. We decided to wait for a minute, grab our pistols and flashlights, and slowly venture out of the tent to see what was causing the noise. We found a man, stripped of his clothing, dead in front of our campsite, half covered in snow. There were 3 bullet wounds, one to his neck, another to his genitals, and a last to his femur. A friend and I immediately began climbing to find a spot with service. Night hiking in snow is horrible, don't do it, and called 911. Roughly 45 minutes later, an EMT helicopter arrived and picked up the body, while a squad of forest rangers combed the woods immediately surrounding us. The body was never identified and is now buried in an unmarked grave near my hometown, where I was attending school. I'm not well versed on pistols and silencers, but I can only assume the pings we heard were the rounds fired. Woke up to insane shrieking and scrapping outside my window. Tried to sleep, and for the next 5 minutes I could hear a bunch of foxes and something else fighting, and the foxes were clearly winning. But I was hoping it was just over food and they'd bugger off. Then all of a sudden it really started to cry, and the foxes would take it in turns to run over the wall it managed to hide behind and bite the poor thing. Each time it would cry and cry. I lost it. This was the cry of an animal that knew it was going to be food imminently. So I put on my clothes and grabbed my umbrella from the door and chased the foxes away out of my garden and down the street. In the morning, plenty of dried blood all over, couldn't find the thing, so I guess he ran off to die someplace out of sight. 0. I'm not usually that taken by things, but the cries as it was being killed by a few foxes really got to me. When I was 4 years old, part of my family was living in Mexico. It was me, my 2-year-old brother, my 7-month-old sister, my 8-year-old sister, and my mother. Our father was back in the States sorting out some legal issues, and my great-uncle had a house in Mexico. It was about a month before my 5th birthday, and I was abruptly woken up by my crazed mother, who told me to get up and get outside. It turns out there was somebody in the house, but I didn't know that until much later. My mom told my sister to go looking in the streets at 2 o'clock in the morning looking for a police officer, while she tried to get my brother and little sister out of the house and make sure they were okay. My older sister came back when she couldn't find anybody, but a neighbor called the cops. Then, my mother left us kids to go search on the beach with our housekeeper. It turns out that there were a few people in the house, and they managed to steal my mother's purse filled with all the money we had, and that would go towards my 5th birthday party among other things. The cops never found the men, but they managed to find my mother's purse that ended up washing up on shore emptied. My brother and I went to visit my dad one summer outside of St. Louis. We both woke up early one morning to a violent storm. I turned on the TV to find we were under a tornado warning. My dad was nowhere to be found. I opened the front door and saw trees across the street falling over from sideways rain and high winds. I yelled "tornado" at my brother and we ran to the basement. Water was gushing in through the windows and walls. We heard what sounded like the house being ripped apart above. We sat, huddled together, for what felt like an eternity. The next thing we heard was our dad yelling for us. Come to find out, he went out for donuts and a paper and got caught in the storm. And that noise we heard was the widow's peak being ripped off my dad's house. A tornado had ripped through that area, uprooting trees, moving sections of sidewalks, and destroying houses. That was one hell of a rude awakening. Easy. Tornado. It was October a few years ago, and we were under a watch when we went to bed. Actually, the sirens went off a few times before we actually decided to go to bed. The radar just showed some isolated blobs of red cells, but the rest was clear. We figured the threat wasn't too bad. Then at about 11 o'clock the sirens blared. We bolted up. The power was already off. It doesn't sound like a train. The best way I can describe it is like a powerful shop vacuum whirring at full speed everywhere outside. We stumbled through the dark, and at the end of the hall is a Palladian window. Every flash of lightning revealed surreal silhouettes of our very old, very large trees in the backyard. At every flash, the branches were at a completely different angle. As we went to the basement, my cat bolted upstairs. In a foolish move, I went after him. I found him and it was all over. Just like that. Luckily, our house barely missed getting damaged, but I needed to take a chainsaw to a 2-diameter tree trunk blocking the driveway. Winter of 8th grade, I believe? It's been a while. My mother wakes me up in the middle of the night, almost hysterical, telling me that I need to get out of the house now before it collapses. As I throw some clothes on and run down the hall and down the stairs, I realize that my parents' room no longer has a door. Just branches and pine needles where it was. Turns out that 2 massive pine trees were knocked over in that night's windstorm and fell onto our house. By some miraculous coincidence, my dad was out of town that night, and I'd been studying balance or stability or something like that in science class and had made some remarks about the tree swaying in the wind that evening. Those 2 factors combined made my mom nervous enough that she decided to sleep in the bonus room. My parents' bed was hit so hard that one of the metal posts was literally driven through the floor. Again, by miraculous coincidence, our kitchen was being remodeled, and when the contractors showed up that morning, they immediately took action to seal up the gaping hole in our house and start fixing the new damage. Basically, 2 giant trees fell on my house. Potentially life-changing tragedy averted by sheer dumb luck. One night I was sleeping happily in my bed with my fiancée, dreaming silly dreams. In my dream, I was also in bed, trying to sleep. Apparently, we were being haunted by a mischievous but not malicious ghost, who was invisibly holding our covers on the ceiling. Annoyed and tired, I told the ghost in a stern voice, "Stop." After a moment of supposed deliberation, the ghost released our covers and they floated down to the bed. My fiancée and I cuddled under the warmth, happy we could finally get some shut-eye. Apparently annoyed with our refusal to play games, the ghost started making a beeping noise. Beep. My fiancée and I ignored it, trying to sleep. Beep. Fiancée nudges me to get the ghost to stop again, but I'm reluctant. Beep. She nudges me harder, and I finally shuffle out of bed into the hallway. Beep. I shuffle through the hallway towards the dark living room. The sound gets louder. As I get to the room, in front of me forms a ghastly skeleton. It reeks of rotting flesh and I can't take my eyes off its dark eye sockets. It was no longer beeping, but began an awful scream and jumped towards me. I awoke with a start and found myself in bed, my fiancée lightly snoring away. I give her a kiss and start to get over the adrenaline rush of the nightmare. Just as I assure myself that I was all right, I hear it. Beep. From the living room. Just like in the dream. I immediately yank the covers up over myself in the way you practice when you're a child. I help my breath as I hear it again. Beep. I realize that I am a 24-year-old man and that I will not go out like a bitch like in all those horror movies. If I have to face this thing, I will fight it off as futilely as I can. I slowly uncovered myself, grabbed a galvanized steel pipe I keep next to the bed, and slowly make my way into the hallway. Beep. I get to the opening, and nearly shaking, I hear the sound right above me. Light flashing, the ghost beeped again. It was the fire alarm, alerting me rather happily that the battery was dying. I spent an hour calming myself down, and finally went back to bed shortly before dawn. I got a phone call from my boyfriend's mom at 2 a.m. She told us her ex-husband chained her to her bed, raped and beat her brutally at gunpoint. He also chained her new boyfriend to the bathroom floor and made him listen to the entire attack. He couldn't do anything. Eventually she escaped and told her ex that he was going to prison or was going to be arrested. He jumped in his car and drove 70+ mph into a steep hill cliff kind of formation at the bottom of a T intersection, with no seatbelt on. He was ejected through the windshield and died instantly. He had been planning this for a long time as he had drilled the chains into the floor while she was away that day. After he died, his family got suicide letters and notes in the mail from him. This man was one of the nicest people I've ever met. Just an all-around awesome guy. I never felt so scared in my life after we got done talking to her that night. It's frightening to know that a completely normal-seeming person has the ability to inflict such evil onto another person. What really pisses me off to this day is that if she'd had stayed with us at our house that night like she planned, that whole event wouldn't have happened. Her ex wouldn't have found her and he'd have gone and killed himself like he planned. See, a few days prior, she was kind of fearful that he might get into a really bad argument with her, so she asked us if she could stay at our place for a few days. I'd give anything for that whole event to be just a bad argument. She drank herself to death over the next 3 months. She was an alcoholic most of her adult life, but was clean for the 4 months prior to the attack. It's been a little over 3 years since she passed. We never got a reason as to why he did it. Even if we did, it wouldn't have sufficed. There's never a justifiable reason to do those things to another person. About a year and a half ago, my boyfriend and I were enjoying the typical evening of toking up, eating good food, watching TV, and playing video games. At about 3:30 a.m. to 4 a.m., there was a really loud knock on the door. I jolted out of bed wondering if that knock really happened. After a short pause, there was another knock and I hear, "Police, open up." I'm still incredibly stoned as I try to throw on some decent clothing. Boyfriend is barely waking up at this point. I couldn't help but think the worst. I opened the door with painful hesitation because I was almost certain the apartment still reeked of weed. The cop knew my name and asked if it was me. I said yes. He then asked if that was my car in the parking lot. It sure was. The cop informed me that my car had been broken into by a guy going around in the neighborhood breaking into cars. They asked me to come down and see if anything had been stolen. Nothing was stolen. They were really nice and polite. I thanked them for being awesome and letting me know, despite scaring the shit out of me. We live in an old house that has a built-in closet in the room, with wooden doors that didn't have rollers and were damned useless. We took the doors out and put a tension curtain rod with a nice curtain to hide the clothes. About every 3 weeks it would fall down, but it was always during the day or the evening. It fell one night at 4:15 a.m. It sounded like a brick shattering our bedroom window. I sat straight up in bed and yelled, "Holy fucking shit, what was that?" Scared the crap out of me. In the quarter of a second it took for me wake up and sit up in bed, I had devised a plan to examine my legs for glass shards, then chase down the assholes who threw the brick. I was naked and it was hot, so no blankets to stop the glass. I was going to grab my maglite and intimidate them with my fat craziness. My girlfriend only half woke to the curtain rod, but my yell got her the rest of the way. I then kept her awake by making her worry that someone could throw a brick through our window. I vowed to get a baseball bat for protection but haven't yet. I did brace the shit out of the curtain rod and make sure it didn't fall, and it hasn't. I get sleep paralysis fairly frequently. I was crashing in a house in Tahoe with a bunch of good friends. I went to sleep and started dreaming. I remember in the dream that I was given some drugs. Right after I took the drugs, someone says, "Oh crap, those were the wrong ones, but don't worry, just take these, it's the antidote." I take the antidote pills, and at that second I wake up, completely paralyzed, not sure if I'm alive. I asked my buddy about it the next morning, and he goes, "Oh, yeah, you were making lots of weird noises," and I was like, "Yeah, I thought I was dead and couldn't move. If I ever do that again, wake me the fuck up." My parents were gone on vacation and I came to house it for them while they were gone. During this time I left for 3 days to go visit my boyfriend's parents. My trip back home was terrible, so when my friends picked me up from the airport they suggested we go smoke some weed. We went back to my house, smoked a bit in my room and opened up the balcony door to air the place out. Then we went into a different bedroom and passed out watching Nip/Tuck. I woke up later to a cop, standing right next to the bed, shining a flashlight at my face and asking me for identification. I confirmed my identity to him, he left, and I fell right back asleep. At some point I noticed both my friends who had been there were gone. I woke up the next morning convinced that I had imagined the whole thing because I had been watching the episode where Christian gets arrested for supposedly being the carver on Nip/Tuck. I assumed my stoned mind just made a weird dream out of what was happening on TV. I found out later from my friend that, when he tried to leave my house, he walked down the stairs and got a gun pointed right in his face. My neighbors had seen the open balcony door and called the police, thinking I was still out of town and someone had broken in. The police were very nice about the whole situation and apologetic for holding my friend at gunpoint, but it was still very, very scary. Man, I've got the perfect story. So first of all, I sleep naked. P.S. I'm a dude, so death to your boner. I usually sleep until around noon since I work late. My apartment also has horrible, one-room air conditioning and it was summer. Like 2 months ago in fact. So I leave my window open at night for the cold air, and sometimes I lift the blinds up about 4 inches to increase the flow. I forgot to close them one night, and the next morning I woke up to some strange ass noise outside. Like shuffling outside my window. After groggily coming to, I realize my dick is out, apartment is an oven, and there's that crack of freely visible space. Normally not a problem, but then I notice something distinctly flesh-covered outside my window. The noises continued, and there was a metallic-like noise every once in a while. I was beginning to wonder if it was like a mechanical camera, and I was about to enter the next level of freaky shit. So I sat there in bed as a socially awkward penguin for like 10 minutes because the blind's pull was far enough from the bed that I'd have to get up and full frontal whoever was possibly creeping on me outside my window. Finally I used pillow shield to accomplish the closure of the 4-inch gap, but I was seriously freaking out. Later I went outside and saw that the maintenance dude was painting the wall my bed is against with a paint roller on a metal ladder with no shirt on. I was just being retarded and paranoid. Although maybe he saw my dick, who knows? I once woke up from a small stinging pain. I thought I must have been sleeping on a small sharp object or something. So I try to clear my bed and go back to sleep, but I keep getting an annoying itch on my back. Eventually I feel something on there while trying to scratch it, and I got a second sting from a wasp that had crawled under my shirt while I was asleep. So I threw away my shirt and sleep naked since then, but for the next few months any itching at night made me jump out of bed and check. Another thing that has scared me several times so far is that I live near a small military base and a nuclear power plant, and sometimes a jet fighter flies over waking me up with a loud sonic boom. My first thought always goes to the nuclear power plant instead of the military base, and for the next half minute I lay awake wondering if I'm about to die or if it was something else. 22 years old, first night in a family home on 80 acres in the country, an hour from town. Been working to live there for months after it was given to me, dealing with legal issues to evict the squatters their cooking meth. Sleeping on the floor in the living room with my cats, while their kittens roam the house, woken up by the worst smoke and hottest air you can imagine. Sat up and oh shit, fucking house is on fucking fire. Stood up and hit with a wall of smoke so foul I passed out. Woke when all the windows shattered from the heat and tried desperately to rescue the kittens. Got all I could until I collapsed outside in the snow in just the bra I wore to sleep in. The fire department showed up after another 20 minutes or so. Fucking squatters set my house on fire. Inhalation, burns on my face, palms, knees, in my mouth. House destroyed, kittens lost, nightmares forever. Worst alarm clock ever. In 2001 I woke up to a friend shoving a steak knife into my right eye socket. It felt like a large stone slamming into my face. I was startled and not really sure what had happened. Both of my eyes were shut from the pressure. I felt around my face and felt something sticking out. As I pulled it out I opened my left eye and saw that it was a knife. I then noticed my friend running around my bed, and not really understanding what had just happened I handed him the knife thinking that he had heard me scream and was helping me. Once I handed him the knife I realized that he was pulling his arm back and he was going to stab me again. Everything clicked at that point and I realized he was trying to kill me. I jumped away from him and off my bed when he stabbed me in the chin. He then fell on my bed and the thought went through my head to stab him in the back, but I just wanted out of the apartment. I went out into the common area and he exited my apartment and went home. I called the police and was taken to the hospital. No damage to my eye. The knife went just enough to the side. What a fucking asshole. Later when I got back from the hospital I noticed that he had taken a significant amount of money from my cigar box. Anyway, he fled south to West Palm Beach and was later arrested. Alex, if you read this, fuck you. Back in college, I lived in a house with 4 other guys for a few months. One night, I woke up to the sound of yelling and loud crashing noises. I bolted up and ran into the hallway. One of my other roommates opened his door at the same time and we exchanged confused glances until we heard where the sound was originating from, one of the other bedrooms. It sounded like there was a struggle going on. We run to the doorway of our roommate Jeremy's room to see him in his shorts, shirtless and wielding a large PVC pipe as if it were a club. His eyes were wide and he was shouting battle cries while wildly swinging the pipe around him. His eyes immediately flicked to us upon hearing us arrive, and then they turned to the largest, meanest possum that I had ever seen. The possum was hissing and darting back and forth in the room. Jeremy swatted around the possum, trying to drive it back towards the open screen door from whence it came. Still recovering from a mix of drowsiness and sudden adrenaline, my roommate and I recovered our wits and started to enter the room, intending to do what, I don't know. Jeremy looked over and stayed us with a motion of his hand and shouted no. Stay back. Finally, he grazed it with a swing of the PVC pipe and the possum sprayed all over the room and darted out of the screen door. Jeremy told us later that he kept the screen door open for the house cat who would come in and out of the backyard. He woke up to the sound of something eating the cat food that he put out in his room. The crunching noises apparently didn't sound like the cat, and so he had flipped on the light when he and the possum met eyes and the thing freaked out. We sat around on the living room couch for a while afterwards discussing how we would approach the situation differently if it happened again. Maybe not the most frightening thing I've woken up to, but definitely the most jarring. Back in the day, I had a TV in my bedroom. It had an alarm feature on it, which I used to wake me up for school. I generally just left on one of the networks, so the morning news would wake me up. When you basically have 10 minutes to wake up, brush your teeth, get in the car, knowing the weather is important. I think around 6:30 a.m. or something like that, while it was still dark, my TV turned on, as it was supposed to. This is back when the first Saw movie was coming out. The trailer had the freaky masked face, I think his name is Jigsaw? I'm asleep, then I hear some type of creepy fucking sound, open my eyes, and it's that goddamned masked face staring at me. That's the only thing I saw. I screamed for a second before I realized what the fuck was happening. Fuck that shit. Still have never watched any of the Saw movies, and never will. When I was like 24 I lost my job. Was living off of unemployment. I didn't have money to renew the tags on my car, and I got pulled over. Ohio State Highway Patrol gave me a ticket. I deserved it, I know I was driving illegally. I accepted it from the cop with no lip or attitude. Tried to pay the ticket, but was having trouble coming up with the money and paying my bills, so I got an extension from the court. The ticket was due on a Friday by 5 p.m., in Bowling Green, Ohio. I lived in Toledo, a 30 minutes drive. My neighborhood was the last stop for the mailman, and my unemployment check didn't arrive till almost 4:45 p.m. I didn't have time to deposit the check and get to the court. So I figure I get it paid Monday morning, no harm no foul. I thought, okay, they'll probably put out a bench warrant till I get this paid, so I will just get rides for the weekend and hang out at people's houses instead of going out. I went out with friends Friday night, got home around 5 a.m., passed out by 6 a.m. 9:30 a.m. I am dead asleep. In the distance, I hear "Sir, roll over and put your hands above your head." It must be a weird dream. I ignore it. It happens again, louder. NNNGH, go away Chris, roommate, I'm sleeping. "Sir, roll over and put your hands above your head." I roll over and blink my sleep-bleary eyes to see two state highway patrol officers standing at the foot of my bed, guns drawn on me. I nearly left a brown stain on the bed. I'm 23 to 24 years old, never been in a day of trouble in my entire life, and the cops have me at gunpoint. Later they told me it was because I was sleeping on my stomach, and they didn't know if I had a weapon. They proceed to cuff me, they graciously allowed me to pull some pants and a shirt on, as I sleep naked, and throw me in the back of the car and haul my ass down to jail for the day before my mom bailed me out that night. Waking up at gunpoint scared the shit out of me. Gave me awful nightmares. I didn't sleep well for 2 months, I was constantly afraid I was going to wake up to a gun barrel. Funny thing is, years later I was sitting at a Big Boy with friends and the subject of police came up, and I said, "Man, I hate cops." My friends all got wide-eyed, and I heard someone standing behind me say, "You want to explain that statement, son?" I look back, and there is this towering monolith of a city cop standing over my shoulder. I invited him to sit, and I told him that story. By the end, he was just shaking his head. Apparently Ohio State Highway Patrol cops are known throughout the country for being giant fucking assholes. He said unsnapping a holster is one thing, but they never should have drawn their weapons on me over a traffic ticket unless I got belligerent and they saw weapons. He apologized on behalf of cops, and said there's some serious assholes with badges out there, but I promise you, we're not all like that. I have a zombie phobia. I don't know if there is a technical term for this. I call it a phobia because I go out of my way to avoid circumstances that may contain, induce, alert zombies. Part of the symptom of this phobia is that I have zombie-oriented dreams during times of extreme stress. They usually begin with a household of people who appear to be living a pretty okay existence during a zombie outbreak. No power, zombies all around, but we're making a go of it and protecting our home. But inevitably something bad happens. Usually at a trickle that turns into a flood. Shots are fired outside, everyone is alert. It's okay, it was just a lone roamer. A guard calms us. Oh, okay, show. Everyone inside goes back to laughing and carrying on happily. But seconds later, a scream. We turn and someone is bitten. Blood streams. Screams, fingers clawing. The rotting flesh sinking into eye sockets, ripping out soft orbs, popping them easily. Another appears. Another. There is panic. Screaming, the trampling of frantic feet. My friends, their children, being ripped apart like melons. Soft flesh squishing through gray lips. Tongues lapping blood. They're in the house. I am shocked, I have no weapon. Their fingers brush my flesh. Goosebumps. I run, no screaming, just intense need to escape. Upstairs, stumbling, to my bedroom. I can look out my window across 75 acres. A sea of writhing gray. Trampling each other, mindless. Their eyes are on me, their hands raised towards my window. They see my face. I hear them at the door. There's nowhere to go. One day I wake up from said dream in my bedroom, which is accurately depicted in my sleep. There is no hum from the air conditioner. The phone is silent. Something is wrong. I reach for my lamp, no power. I lay stone still in my bed, like not moving would make me invisible. 10 minutes. I can't take it anymore. I turn over softly and look out the window, keeping as low to the bed as possible. My eyes scan across 74 acres. No zombies. I was still totally shaken though and had to spend the day with my parents. I'm totally surprised I didn't wet my bed. Worst way I've woken up in a while. This happened a couple years ago but comes up frequently in conversations because of how much it freaked me out. Anyways, I woke up and was like completely awake. I just lay there for a moment confused before I hear a faint sound, like the bass of a song being played in a car far away. I look at my phone and it was 3:30 exactly. I mentally shrug it off and attempt to go back to sleep. Suddenly there is a very loud and prominent drumming sound. Boom, boom, boom. A deep and steady drumming and I can't figure out where it's coming from. I am now very confused but entirely unconcerned. I then hear someone walking around my house and decide to grab my tiny little pocket knife and investigate. Walking out into the hall I run right into my mom, who is literally shaking. Apparently she woke up at exactly 3:32 and was upset. We spent the following order freaking the fuck out as we go from window to window trying to find the drumming noise. The sound finally stops and we're like haha okay that was weird but I'm freaked out and asked to sleep in my mom's room. I was a wimpy 12-year-old. We head back to her room and the drumming sound starts again. This time it sounds like it's right outside the window. My mom goes to the window and the drum sound just fucking starts moving around and sounds like it's in the house. It only lasted a moment after that and was silent after. We haven't heard it since. I jokingly asked my neighbor about it the next day and she said yeah. I heard it too. I thought you guys were playing drums in your house. Weird that my dogs didn't bark though. Still freaks me out to this day.